we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. It is Markets in the Morning. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Welcome to Markets in the Morning. Today is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. This is Markets in the Morning, where we take a look at the price action of the cryptocurrency market, including the Bitcoin price chart, along with the XRP price chart and the altcoin market, as we get ready for the United States stock market to open up in about 29 minutes. Take a look over there at precious metals like gold and silver, the DXY, or US dollar currency index, the VIX. We'll look over there at any type of crypto news going on out there at the halfway point of the week, and any type of financial news as we get ready to kick off Fed Day, right? Today is FOMC Day. Not expected to be any type of cuts by any means. I think a 99% probability that it will remain exactly where it is, still remain paused. This will be Jerome Powell's second to last meeting as Fed chair, or FOMC conference, whatever. Second to last one for Jerome. But anyway, happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Let's kick it off right.
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday, my
Alrighty, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Markets in the Morning today. Before we get kicked off, of course, Chief Tane did gift 50 memberships. I'm so grateful to this guy every time we do Markets in the Morning. Absolutely amazing, and I'm so grateful to you. He did also mention that it's his wife's birthday today. So glad he's the Empress. Happy birthday. Chief Tane is a wonderful guy for the stream. Always here every single time, always right when the stream kicks off. It's always funny with wives, and I'm sure a lot of the men here can relate to this, and I don't even know, but I'm making an absolute guess that your wife probably says, "Oh, you're watching that, hey, what's going on guy," right? Every time I meet people in person, I bring that up, and every wife knows it whenever I meet a dude and his wife. So Gladys, thank you for supporting your man, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm assuming you're probably going to end up watching this. So Chief Tane, thank you very much, guys. I hope that you're all doing well. And to all the wives out there, I hope you have great hey impressions, and thank you for tolerating your man for tuning in. But let's go ahead and dive on into the content in here. Bitcoin sits at $72,300 as we kick off this Wednesday. XRP sits at $1.46. Ethereum at $22.36. Russell at about $2,500. Silver's taking a drop. It's at $76. Gold's taking a drop. It's at $48.60. And so, dang, that's quite a bit from when I created. Let me go look at this. What was it at when I set the stream up? Gold was at $49.90. So gold has dropped like $130 in the last 30 minutes. So we got stuff going on out there in precious metals. So we've got a lot of things kind of starting to move back into the right direction for the crypto market. And like you got like gold's, kind of chilling out. Do you have the Russell, right? We talked like Russell back test of the previous high. We've kind of gotten right there too. So things are starting, and of course, we've already seen capitulation throughout the cryptocurrency market, high volume, and we've now gotten a negative news narrative to come in here. So there's a lot of positive developments, and then our indicators are getting there, right? We're just kind of doing the stuff of kind of like crossing the desert down at the low, right? So that's like a lot of things. We want it, of course, we all want it to just turn back up very quickly and go back to the upside. But typically these are going to be processes that have to work out down in here. But still, even on February 5th, when we got the capitulation, it was like the immediately pivoted the channel to say, it's no longer about being the bear. It's going to be about looking for bottom formations and accumulations. And we just kind of get things to kind of stack on top of themselves that are supporting that still. So let's just kind of look through things, right? The move, we've seen Bitcoin obviously shoot its way back up in here. It's now kind of back testing that underside support level that really held it for a year. It's still just going to be about accumulations in here. XRP, right? We've talked about, these are very difficult. Like, here's two different formats of what accumulation schematics looked like at the bottom of past bear markets in crypto. And we can go just range bouncing all over either side of the range, and very difficult to know which one we're going to end up doing in here. So far, it still looks very Wyckoff accumulation-ish in here right now, rather than obviously a quick little spill to the downside. The thing I've talked about with the on-chain data, the thing that just kind of, if we keep kind of going at this, is it going to have to be that there's going to be like positions that all get built up throughout here? And the way we can hit the on-chain losses is by doing a longer desert crossing, where you get people kind of FOMOing in here, and then those positions go upside down, and then that's how we hit the on-chain losses without actually setting a new low. Still going to be a wait in here, but right now, at least today, I don't know. It's looking pretty similar to Wyckoff. If you were gonna, the thing that would lead me to think, okay, it's probably going to be this long Wyckoff, which I'm not convinced yet. But if it did just start kind of drifting back up to the top of this range again one more time after coming down in here and then shooting up to the top of the range, then this is going to be what? Look at the months. Look at the months down here. What will this be called? A cruel summer. Yeah, so probably cruel summer in there for just kind of desert crossing happening throughout that stuff. We typically have cruel summers. They're typically kind of slow, especially through these types of time periods. So if we don't go ahead and start getting it pretty soon, that'll be kind of my thought process heading into that. So don't know right now still, but that will be where we would head to if we start shifting back to the top of the range. It'll be like, all right, that was the completion of the climatic selling, the secondary test. Then it's about shifting into secondary test in phase B, which would last all throughout our summer months, at least here in the United States. Those are our summer months from May through July, and then, then we can get our spring, and then we hit on chain losses, and off and away we go. But this is very preliminary. It's very early to be trying to make that guess that is how that's going to end up playing out. If it can go for it much faster, I'll reinitiate my 2% daily auto buys. Until then, I'm just going to have to kind of be patient and wait for that to kind of play out in there. But, these are things too, looking at it. We're all just talking about accumulation schematics, right? So these are all accumulations, the worst of it being behind us. It's all about just trying to scoop up the lower prices and for the bigger boys to have time to scoop up their prices before the market can turn its way around. But on the bigger time frames, obviously, we've gone through these. I don't want to keep repeating them, but sometimes it's good. Like when we're just trying to do the pick me up or a little bit of reassurance, people are typically pretty beaten up in a market after we get to this point right here. Just kind of reiterating things, hammering them home, right? The worst of it being behind us. This was a bear market the whole time. Now we've gotten into the oversold conditions. You bounce out of them, then this is how long these things can take to just kind of meander out throughout these things after you go through those phases. And that's just where we're at right now. Ethereum, of course, I've talked about this too. Same story, right? We've gotten all these oversold conditions happening over here, right? This is not where, so this is like back in October, right? So this is October 6th with Ethereum starting to turn over in here. Remember, this is right when we're having bear week. We have bear week through the last week of September into the first week of October, right? This is not where we want to become bullish on the market and euphoric. And once these things can start curling themselves back up, well, what do we do here, right? If this starts to curl back up like this, well, then what? Well, then we have the polar opposites, right? Then we start looking at it through the lens of, hey, we could start shifting our way back up. And so those are just kind of the things we're working on right now, and they just take a little bit of time to be able to play out. But, we've clearly gotten down to levels that are historically where lows can start to build in here. I've already started accumulating. As you know, I got to 50% entry, just waiting to see, if I'm going to be able to, like, if this becomes a range, like the value zone of this range is like for XRP is going to constantly be under that $1.31 level. And that anytime you can get below that $1.31, you're more in a value area in here. And then if Bitcoin, goes and gets down near the lows or sets a new low, that would be the value area for Bitcoin at the same time. And the same goes for Ethereum, anything into these lows down in here. Potentially even, it'd be crazy if it did, if it was able to sweep that low right there at about 1400, definitely be yellowing. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of a patience game and waiting to see how it all plays out. In regards to timing. And I know that's the number one question everybody wants to know. How long will this take? I will never have the how long will it take answer for you. But I can just tell you price levels, indicators, market behavior, we're way better off than we were 2 months ago. We're certainly way better off than we were 6 months ago at this point, for things being able to turn themselves back up and improve. So, okay, there you go. There's your XRP. Bitcoin on the bigger time frames, Ethereum we talked about in the bigger time frames, right? IGV, this is going to be the big thing too. Yeah, I don't think I brought this up in the last video, but I've brought it up in several videos prior to that, newsletters, markets in the mornings, all that stuff. This is kind of our waiting point on accumulation, right? Are we just kind of like 1/3 of the way through accumulation, right? Does it end up being this dip and then ABC and then, that's how we end up playing out? Maybe. But we'll just kind of patiently wait, right? We are beyond the phase of bear market. And I keep kind of hammering that home. If you're being told by your favorite content creator that was bullish all the way down and now willing to call it a bear market, I'm not going to say anything. Okay. You could weed out your own information however you would like. Russell 2000, sitting right there at, the support level from there is 2458 is where our previous high. So, I mean, a big question here is just, is this going to be able to bounce out of here? Right? Is this now the back test, right? Everybody kind of freaking out like, oh, hey, we're heading up in here. Why isn't the crypto market following? I need to go find the video. I think I need to go find the video, and I don't know where it would be. I think it may even be in a markets in the morning. Theorizing that it would be that the crypto market would capitulate on a back test. So, like, we try to stack things and try to create theses. You say, okay, well, if you back test from here, and then you have silver and gold reversing, and then the indicators start to flip everything. We just got a lot more stacked in our favor than we did several months ago. Metals are obviously cooled off. I don't know if they're crashing yet, but they're certainly cooled off in here. The VIX was, catching a big spike a couple of weeks ago. Now it's back chilling back down below 25. So things look pretty settled in here. I think I posted something yesterday. Gosh, will it be on here? No. One thing we hammered home a lot is that the fall that we've seen in the crypto market, this was your silent fall. We knew that in here. This was our silent fall in here. The loud noise all came down in here, all in this stuff right in here. And we finally have gotten some loud stuff, but there's been no narratives. And, of course, the thing that I've seen, it's been so difficult listening to a lot of the YouTubers and the content over the last couple of months because they're just constantly saying it's not a bear market, it's a bull market, it's not a bear market, it's a bull market. Now they're saying it's a bear market, and then latching on to the geopolitical stuff and holding on to narratives, right? And so I just want people to recognize when you are trading a news wire, or if you're following news, and if your content consumption is what's going on in the news, you are 10 steps behind the market already. You're always going to get annihilated. And like all these people who are like, oh, the Clarity Act, when the Clarity Act passes, that's when the crypto market will pump. If anything, that would be a moment that the market would get annihilated at, is when the Clarity Act passes. It would be polar opposite, because what is everybody trying to do? They're trying to front run the Clarity Act, right? It happens, buy the rumor, sell the news, right? If you're following news as your topic of how you're going to have alpha in this market, you are always going to get annihilated. And so what's fascinating, of course, is we get all of our negative news right here. This is the beginning of the stuff, geopolitical stuff right in here. And what happens? Prices go up. And I've watched everybody be like, I'm going to wait for this to play out. I'm going to monitor the situation, right? I think from a technical perspective, certainly we can dip down in here, but it has absolutely nothing to do with this geopolitical stuff, right? The market is up since the geopolitical stuff. So I just hope people realize you are wasting your time watching news content. You are wasting your time watching people read other people's tweets and read news on YouTube. And following news, and that your alpha people are the news guys. So there you go. Market's up. Am I being a jerk? Maybe. All right. So there you go. VIX chilling. So anyway, that's where we're at right now, right? Like Bitcoin's clearly gotten back down to the underside of this range in here. We're still just in. My thoughts are accumulation schematics. It could be long and drawn out, I think, unless if we can get it sooner than later. If we can get it sooner than later to go dip back down, I think we could have the potential to reverse out much faster. If we just kind of play this kind of game in here, then to me, it seems like we're just entering into like the desert crossing Wyckoff accumulation and stuff in here. And there's still a lot of time to be able to play out and a lot of structure for it to play out to be able to determine which one are we going to end up getting. But don't follow news as your determination on what to end up doing. So that's just a pro tip. I use the news as the opposite for me, right? So, okay. Speaking of that, let's look at the news. Stock futures rise as traders look ahead of Federal Reserve interest rate decision. All right, so here's the Fed decision stuff, right? So 99% probability that it will not see any type of cut today, that it will be paused. I look at over here at probabilities. It is looking like we are not going to get another rate cut in 2026. So, yeah. I mean, it's got like a 50% chance we get one in September, 25 basis points, but it doesn't have another one happening for a whole year after that. So where we're at, or a quarter point lower from where we're at right now, is what the market is pricing in for the next year and a half. Right? Remember all the news people telling us that rate cuts were going to be bullish for the market? What happened? What happened? Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's today. We used to live stream these, but, you look back on it too, if you remember this. So I strategically stopped doing these when I did, but you also look back on it and you can reflect to think how that actually was the mark of the top, local top at least, when the last FOMC that I did. And we had reinitiated the 25 basis points rate cuts. Do you remember how busy the live stream was that day? It was super busy that day. It was so busy that even the Federal Reserve's website was like crashing on us, to where the live stream was kind of impacted by it. And like it kept crashing, and we just had to like play the audio from the Federal Reserve's YouTube page because the video was crashing, because there was so much interest, so much hype about the Fed reinitiating these cuts. Let's see if we can locate that. Right. It was in September, right? The cuts began, top of the market. Crazy. Okay. All right, let's go through it again. 72,000 for Bitcoin. It's backside of the undertest. I do think we're just in accumulation schematics happening in here, and it's just going to take some time. We're through capitulation. We're through all the nasty stuff of the market, and this is just where sentiment is extremely deteriorated. This is where news impacts people. and just kind of, I know I sound like a jerk when I talk about this stuff, but the reason what being is that there's so much content out there. There's so many people who act like they know what they're doing, and they're using the news to tell you to buy tops, or using the news to tell you to sell bottoms or not to touch things at bottoms. And I just don't think there's, I feel bad for people. I mean, that's just kind of where it comes to. I feel bad that it's like a feedback loop. A large following means more large following and trusted voices, and uh, just don't. I think the reason I'm frustrated is because we anticipated that we would have negative news down in here. Now we've got all the technical things kind of happening down in here of where we're at. And negative news will always come when prices are down and when sentiment is deteriorated. And if you are finding yourself overly consuming the negative news, and it's paralyzing you, it's happening exactly where it should. Just like at peaks, news creates FOMO, it creates excitement, and down in the troughs, negative news is going to always occur. We'll probably get more negative news, right? It's like the way markets work is that you are designed to get absolutely shaken out at these lows from negative news. And I think a lot of people, hype things by saying, "Oh, you're trying to get shaken out, you're weak hands, blah, 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 blah." But it really is designed this way, that when prices get really low, we get hit with negative news. And that's why for months leading up to it, I tried to warn you there would be negative news. There's no way to know what it is. I remained very humble in it and saying I have no idea what it will end up being. I don't even know if what we've seen is all of it. If there could be more. But just, you have to anticipate that. You're not going to get bombarded with it, right? And it's like we get good news too, but it doesn't impact prices, right? Like I think the SEC and the CFTC issued a joint statement yesterday designating digital commodities, right? I don't know how many they did. I didn't count them. It was like 15 of them in there, right? XRP is officially now labeled as a digital commodity amongst the CFTC and the SEC, along with a lot of other coins too. Bitcoin, Cardano, Chainlink. Did I say Ethereum already? I don't know. Bitcoin Cash, Hedera Hashgraph. I think I said Chainlink already. I can't remember. I don't know. I just Avalanche. But those things don't really matter. Really, it's these types of things that all matter in here. So do yourself a favor. Ignore news. And that was the interesting thing about the fall on the way down. I know I'm still continuing to ramble on this, is that the reason people had a very difficult time being able to remove their cognitive dissonance on the way down is because they were following news. There was no reason to believe that prices could fall because of the news. And I want you to reflect that, because our memories get jogged from just 2 months ago. But people didn't believe that we would fall because there was no negative news to imply that it could end up happening. As we get low, we're going to get bombarded with negative news. Be prepared for that. This is where the strongest survive. And by no means will any negative news scare me from buying this market. So hammer in that home. Okay, we hit news. Okay. Key U.S. Senator eyes breakthrough for stall crypto bill. Bitcoin stalls at 76K. Bitcoin standard author explains reality where decentralized gold stopped World War I. That sounds stupid. Meta Planets, Japan, Bitcoin, Bithumb ordered suspension. Decentralized compute has failed so far. Bitcoin top 74.5K, but our pro traders turning bullish again. Strategy buys $1.6 billion in Bitcoin is holding surpassed 761,000 Bitcoin. That's something interesting I've noticed about strategy, how much Bitcoin they're buying right now. I remember in the last bear market, they were not buying nearly as much. Price predictions, bunch of assets. Bitcoin near 75K. Traders say Bitcoin price squeeze changes nothing. South Korea police draft crypto seizure rules after custody lapses report. Again, I think this is one of those things where I think the market doesn't know where it's at. The crowd... Okay, this is me not being a jerk. This is me being just real serious here. The crowd is always really late on where they think we are within the market cycle at all times. And that, for some reason, it never changes. And I'm not just talking about this circumstance or this. It is always right? So like the crowd's going to think this is the beginning of the bear market, and rather than this is the beginning of the bear market again. So the crowd's going to be stuck thinking that we are now just starting a bear market here in October. We're what, 6 months into a bear market right now, but we're not, and we are a year and 2 months into a bear market, and so it's already about being in accumulation, and so that's why you will see a lot of fear and worry and everything like that, because people are always really late. And then when the prices start moving up, remember what happens once the bottom comes in, right? And once prices start coming up, there's a lot, we call it the wall of worry. We climb the wall of worry because the entire crowd's still a phase behind, right? So it's always like that. So just kind of being prepared as we head into this in here, that we are down here because we're already deep, way into the bear market. And if anything, bottoming. In building bases and working on accumulations. So, okay. I don't feel like I'm providing any alpha at this point. I'm just rambling. So we'll go ahead and hop into the chat. I don't think there's anything to do. Let's do a reset. Let's do this. Big deep breaths and...
It is Wednesday, my It is Wednesday.
Okay. All right. We'll get on a much more fresh start. Here, let me explain this. Why am I like worked up over the news stuff? I do think we're like working out bottoming stuff, and I posted this last Friday. Right. I sympathize those who are feeling overwhelmed with narratives and catalysts every time they log on. This is typical in these phases of markets. Bottoms are processes. We capitulated. Lows could still be swept, but negative news is the norm in these phases. Keep your chin up. I went through and watched some YouTube videos of people who were bullish the whole way down and have watched the tune change where they're calling it a bear market. They're focusing on the geopolitical stuff. And even when I log on to X, of course, it's just, you're just bombarded with a lot of, and it's not so much this week, but at least last week, bombarded with a lot of the negative news and things like that. And people get beaten up really bad. And I think it's just a disconnect of where we are in the market. If anything, like, people should be optimistic. We are where we are right now. We are so far past the worst of all of this stuff in this market. This is how markets turn up and start their things all over again. So I'm very excited for where we're at. I'm very frustrated that the crowd had to hear the constant bull messaging the whole way down, and now they're getting bombarded with, alpha news, negative, being cautious, monitoring the situation. It's just so stupid. And I hope you are all surviving this okay. Even my entire newsletter, talking about sentiment, right? And that sentiment gets deteriorated at these levels. It's typical that it ends up happening. I just want to help you realize this isn't a place where your sentiment should be deteriorated. This should be a place where you're feeling better, more optimistic. Yep, these are processes. They could sweep these lows and do these things. This is where the panic should have set in. This is where all the worry should have set in. The concern, oh no, man, we're not even done. We have a lot more to go. Oh no, it's going to be really bad. Not here. Not anymore. So, all right, there you go. Hopping into the chat. Okay, I got to refresh this page because I can't read any of your super chats. Okay. There we go. Okay, we had started with Chieftain. And of course, Gladys is just walking around saying, happy birthday to me. All right. Jay McCallan, thank you for the superset. Hey, BCB, is the group you were referring to last week Grayscale? We want to know your next Ethereum Classic Zcash play. Like I'm not gonna that. This is why I already know to not even say the coin because I think people are gonna try to. I'm gonna get super chats for 4 years about it. I don't want it. I don't want it. Mount Skyfall. What about silver? Consolidation around 80, 120 soon. I think we could see silver in the 60s again. And that it probably is stalled out for some time before it rolls up and heads into the hundreds again. Joshua M236. The Max Pain event is coming soon. I remember the summer during C19. It was against my nature to accumulate. It was painful, but it pays off. Right. So the summer of prior to C19, right? So we just got to look at it from a technical stuff, right? We can all speculate on lots of different things and everything like that. We just got to look at it from a chart perspective on things that were different in here, right? We had obviously already rallied from $3,000 to nearly $14,000 at that point. And then, just hanging out in these levels in here. It's not like we were oversold by any means, like we were back in here at the bottom of the bear, or back in here at the bottom of the bear, back in here in the bottom of the bear, right? Like, so you're referring like I held off and didn't do anything here. Yeah, you're in this middle ground. You're in this kind of weird consolidation, right? Crash, retrace, reaccumulation phase, and you haven't hit back down to these lows. So that's really just a different structural ranging setup that's happened in there. So from a technical perspective, it's hard to make an argument that this stuff in here is resemblance of what's going on in here after we've rolled, right? After we've rolled all the way down, there's just not the similarities of the two. You know what I mean? Now, if this thing just waddles sideways for 6 months and then we spring down in here, like in September or something like that, this would be where the max pain event would happen. This is where everybody would think we're not coming back from this again. I hope it doesn't take that long. We still have to have price action play out. But I don't know if we can draw similarities of saying these two events are in any way similar, right? Because this has been a traditional bear. And I know it doesn't look the same, right? Just like this one didn't really look the same as this one, right? But otherwise, it's more so resemblance of trying to accumulate lows, right? Than it is after some big rally, ranging, and then, that stuff. All right, I better get all of this off the screen before somebody tunes in and says, what's going on? Thank you, though. Turn to score. Hey, man, do you keep an eye on DOT? Not like a strong eye. I'm not really like following any altcoins incredibly closely outside of things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, where I'm like watching them closely. I know this whole market has to move together. Otherwise, it's just everything's down in the dumps right now. G-Dupe says, stink bid still place? Yes. So essentially the way I treat it is if I'm deciding to accumulate, I'm canceling some stink bids and then accumulating, right? Canceling some stink bids and accumulating. Otherwise, the money just sits in the stink bid, right? It's not like it sits just hanging out in cash. All the money that I still have in my brokerage accounts is all with stink bid placements right now. So I still have, right? I'm still prepared to accumulate 50% in the market, but all 50% of that cash is stink bid place. In case like overnight, there's some crazy liquidation and they all just get hit. And that's how they end up getting filled. 1001. What does your gut tell you for XRP? The move we had the last couple of days looks very similar to the run up to 240 in January with capitulation following in January. Oh, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't remind me of that at all. Right? No, like when we did this, we expected it, right? Like, and we called it out in the middle of it, right? You can just videos pertaining to this exactly, expecting that the next move would be capitulation. I think if anything, the question is if it's more something like this to still continue doing this type of stuff in here, and if this is going to be long and drawn out. Right. I'm not ready to make the statement that I think we're going to have the desert crossing phase happening yet. Preferably, I don't know if I'm holding hopes on just wanting it to get over with faster. but it's just frankly because I don't know. When you go into these are clearly the different shapes we can take in accumulation schematics, and just waiting for one or the other to really show its hand. But no, I don't in any way view this similar to the stuff in here, right? If anything, it's looking awfully a whole lot more like the first secondary test of Wyckoff accumulation right now. So, which obviously I'm okay with, right? If we're at the bottom, but just like everybody's number one question is always when moon, but phrased in various different ways and creative styles to try to get me to not recognize they're asking when moon. But like everybody, I want things faster than the market wants to dish out most of the time. But if we do look like we're having a structured Wyckoff accumulation in here, then it's going to have to be all right, well, here's 2026, here's 2026. So, but to answer your question, I firmly do not believe what we're doing resembles that of this. Because I just don't think we're there. I think it's done a really good job following along with classic stuff in here. If anything, I think it's more like that. But I'm hoping it's a trick and it's like this and we can get it over with quickly. So we'll see. User B304J says, "Hola. Are the past 8 days of green candles of any significance? It seems nuts." It doesn't seem that nuts, right? So what happens, right? Everybody gets terrified of the markets. Everybody's saying, be patient, don't buy, don't buy, don't buy. Market climbs on extreme fear. That's after hitting oversold conditions, after having an extremely high volume event happen at the low. Totally not unusual for markets to rise into that, right? Everybody gets caught wrong-footed at the top. People all get caught wrong-footed at the bottom. I don't think people were really buying down in here. I think people were too nervous of it. And if anything, you would think, how would a typical retail investor behave in this type of environment, right? Like whether we handle it appropriately or not, I say, what does a normie do? What does a normal person do, right? A normal person is extremely euphoric. They're not bullish enough, right? We're going to go to the moon. You're not bullish enough. Prices fall, right? Are you guys still there? Oh, no. Okay, we're good. No, I still see you there. Okay, if I disconnected, my bad. If I didn't, sorry, it sounded weird. So then what happens to sentiment after you fall, right? Well, one, they were extremely bullish. They thought we were going to the moon. Then they're told, no, everything was okay. This isn't a bear market. We are fine. And then they get that messaging told to them from November all the way till February, right? So they get over 2 months of messaging telling them that everything is okay. And then prices fall down dramatically again, right? Now you know. And then the content creators say, okay, now I say it's a bear market, right? So now they're beaten up really bad. And then they get hit with geopolitical fear, right? So how does a normal person react to that? A normal person throws in the towel. A normal person says, I don't know what to do in this market anymore. Everybody was bullish. Everybody said we were going to go up. Prices keep going down. I'm feeling max pain of pressure on my portfolio. Now, there's no way this thing is going up. I'm not listening to these knuckleheads anymore. There's a geopolitical event happening. I'm not doing anything. Or I'm selling, or I'm walking away, or I'm not buying, right? That would be the standard thought process a normal person would go through. And the sell pressure ran out. So I don't think it's unusual that prices would rise off of that. And we saw the technical indicators to say prices would rise off of that. So I don't find it odd that you have 8 days of green candles. You see those types of things happen all the time. I think sellers are exhausted and retail is just beat up. Xmo Daddies, BCB on 2.5, you called making a stab at circle. At what price point would you consider a stab at it now? How do you think the chart looks? Extension. Yeah, I can't touch it now. It's $133. I only got 20% of my orders filled. So I'm a sideline pleb on Circle. I've got some, but you guys know I was monitoring it very closely. Then it, didn't remain top priority of what I was focusing on. And trust me, I'm mad about that one because I had that one. But if it probably came back down to the lower 80s again, I'd probably start stacking it again. I cannot reasonably add more in the 130s, which is what I said in the 120s. And that's what I also said in the 110s. So I'm making money, just not as much money as I had hoped I would be making. So. But back to user B304J, it said, thanks for always giving us a little bit of reassurance. Thank you, brother. But Xmo Daddy is like, they don't expect green lines. They expect years of consolidation and working its way back up, right? Harry says, what other jobs did you do before importing? I don't really give too much of my... I've worked corporate life. I did corporate life for probably 8 years. Attempted a couple of my own businesses prior to that. But I've never done anything like in financial sector prior to that. Worked in the corporate world of new home construction as well. I worked in the corporate world of new home construction into the great financial crisis. And the business collapse, I got laid off during the great financial crisis in the home building sector. So a lot of that paranoia, concern, the conservative fiscal behavior still stems back to being massively impacted financially by the great financial crisis and seeing it firsthand for myself. And, at my age, you can extrapolate at least how old I am if I was working in corporate in 2007 and 2008, that the majority of people in crypto have never been through a recession, and C19 absolutely doesn't count. There was nothing compared to the great financial crisis. The bailouts of C19, it just was nothing, right? You couldn't even foreclose on a house in C19 because they did foreclosure forbearance or whatever they ended up doing. There were no foreclosures during C19, right? So, yeah, but I've worked I've worked for multiple major corporations that are still around today. Yeah. Hyde Park Ninja. Have a good day at work, bro. Opportunity YouTube. Salute BCB. Are the days of $1 XRP over? I don't know if they're necessarily over. It just depends on how this accumulation ends up going right in here, right? I think if it sweeps that low, we'd see $1. All right, so I'm being real careful with my wording when I come on here and stuff like that. I'm trying not to be moon boyish to you guys and be like, here's how long it's going to take for things to ramp up and go. We're operating under different phases right now, right? We're operating under the fact that we've gone through bear market. Now we're working on accumulation schematics, and accumulation schematics can take various shapes, but we have a lot of signs to tell us, right? We've gotten past the bad point, right? And a lot of signs telling us we've gotten past the bad stuff, right? The major losses happening. We've gotten past that. Doesn't mean we won't sweep lows or we end up running sideways for a long time. And I'm not trying to, pitch you and hype you that we're going to explode to the upside really soon. But it's being that we spent 6 months, 5 months talking about bear market, bear market, bear market. Now it's about accumulation, accumulation, accumulation. Then once signs become really obvious that we're getting near accumulation, then we talk about upside. Let's go. Let's roar. And so any upside action we experience right now, I just think of it as that we could be just hanging out in a range right now, right? I think it's fully reasonable. A reasonable person would expect it's likely ranging behavior for a little while here, unless otherwise proven differently. But to say that we can't hit $1 again, I think we could. You know. Desmo, thank you very much, man. Desmo, give it 50. Thank you. Yeah, this is why I can't do it. See, like this next super chat. Yo, bro. Hey, BCB, what are your thoughts on the next Ethereum Classic and Zcash? Have a great day, right? So I made a comment, right? Like the Zcash, in the time of it, like when it hit the 4.236, I'm like, all right, I think that's going to be it. I'm done with this thing. Because it has the same players as Ethereum Classic, and that's what Ethereum Classic did. And we made those relationships of the timing of this Zcash pump happening to the top of the market, just like Ethereum Classic did back in 2021. Same players, same market behavior, 4.236, extremely late in the cycle happening in here, right? But one thing to think about for those who are like trying to solve the puzzle on what's the next coin that these players are playing in, remember how long it took these things. They were literally the last things to go. You did a full market cycle of everything in both cycles, right? 2021, 2025, you did full market cycles. Did Zcash do anything before that? No. You had to sit in absolute horror for the whole time. How do I know? Because you guys were commenting on it. What do you still like? What do you still think of Zcash? What do you still think of that? I'm not going to have that happen to me with whatever coin they're all attached with now for the next 4 years, waiting for the market cycle and the top of Bitcoin to come in, the top of the cryptocurrency market to come in, and then having to wait 2 months after the top's already in. Do you still think this coin's... I'm not dealing with any of that, right? So you guys go figure it out. I don't own any of it. I'm not planning on it. So don't bother me about it. There we go. And that is only out of love. And I otherwise wouldn't mind it if I didn't have to deal with 4 to 5 years of Zcash nonsense. And then when Zcash pumped to the moon and hits the 4.236 extension, it's not like that 4 to 5 years of crap I had to deal with gets washed away. It's not like a victory party is thrown for me. It's not like all of that disappears and we're good. No, then it's like, okay, what's the next coin? Right? It's like there's no benefit. Brandon Hammond, let's say this is Wyckoff. Would it be plausible that we go down first and then we suddenly start thrusting back and forth before we just explode? Okay, buddy. All right, Ocean Dad Life, please stock up your gray. It's Wednesday, men's t-shirt. Oh, dude, I haven't. Yeah, sorry, I haven't looked at the merch in a long time. I don't really make anything from the merch, and I made that only because Markets in the Morning participants pressured me, mainly probably Oscar, to make some type of merch. So PTW, are you listening? Please check on the merch. And we should have done the leggings for Christmas. We should have done them. How many men how many wives would have worn them? None. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to take a look at it. People bothered me about getting merch for months before I ended up doing it. I will try to go back through it again. And I'm very grateful that you want to buy some merch. That's really cool. That you're like, I love the show. I want a Wednesday shirt. I'll open up a tab on my own. There we go, merch. And then that way, next time I'm messing around on my computer, that tab will be open. I'll be like, oh yeah, I need to do that. Okay, thank you. Stephen Edinburgh, thanks for all you do, mate. Bitcoin looks like it's testing the underside of the 4.236 from December 2017 range after the sell-off earlier. Double tap at 62. $62. You know, I think you're just in a lot of ranging action, guys. And so I think, like, that's my best guess, is that we are doing a lot of ranging right now. And with ranges, you go to the tops of the range, the bottom of the range, the top of the range, bottom of the range. Does it seem plausible that we come back down to the bottom of the range again? It seems very plausible. Do I have extreme confidence on it? No. We need more things to play out in here. I don't think we're trending yet. But if you're going to hold out for 62, I think it's totally reasonable, right? I'm still sitting on 50%. I'm not touching anything, right? I'm just going to sit back, chill, let something very clear show up and not force myself to have to see it. I know we are beyond capitulation. We are beyond the phases of typically the worst, right? But then it's just questions of this type of stuff, right? It's questions of this type of stuff happening in here, questions of this type of stuff happening in here. And so we all want definitive answers on which ones are going to play out. Maybe we could see they all can act very differently down here at the lows. So would a sweep to the downside be logical? Sure. Until something becomes really, really clear, right? Like, just do you have the capabilities to determine really clear which one, how this accumulation schematic is going to play out, or that they're incredibly consistent with each other? I know they're going to be inconsistent. And once something becomes really clear to say, hey, I think I got a perfect read on the accumulation, you know, then we can talk about it in that manner. Until then, we just kind of got to play the reassurance game, right? And I think that's the main thing right now. Like, the last several months, I've really had to play the guy that people didn't want to hear to say we're going down. Now I get to play the guy of, we've seen the high volume, we've seen the oversold conditions, we've gotten very close to on-chain losses. Now it seems like we're in accumulation schematics. Accumulations can be very different and very, like, even this, right? Like, looking at Bitcoin, right? We spent a lot of time thinking this was going to be the top of Bitcoin, but not knowing how it would end up being look like, right? Would it be a parabola in here? Would it be an upthrust after distribution? What would it end up looking like up in here? But knowing that this top should be here between 120 and 135. And during all of that, people trying to get me to say higher numbers, higher numbers, higher numbers. And I still just kept believing, no, I think we're in distribution. It seems like we're in distribution. And then, like, what happens? Like, there's extreme euphoria here into October. Like, remember that, right? Those same types of things can happen to the underside, that we can really just have a lot of chaotic price action happen in here, right? There could just be a whole lot of, like, chaotic price action that happens in here. And then rather than there being, like, the euphoric, crazy part that ends up happening, it's the petrifying, terrifying part that happens in here and then reverses, right? Like you had in here, right? This is where the mockery is happening at full fees. You are not bullish enough, right? Like, or is there negative news? Is there something? Is there chaos, right? And then there's a, final push that happens in there, and then it all reverses on out. That's the challenges of distribution and accumulation when we're looking for, like, very specific setups. And right now, like, it's so early. Like, if this is Wyckoff accumulation, it's so early in it that you wouldn't even be 1/3 of your way through it to be able to clearly identify all the phases happening in here of at least, like, your selling climax, your secondary test, and then shifting into secondary test in phase B, right? Like, if we start shifting into secondary test in phase B, right, and then we're just kind of waddling in here, right, and then we attempt to go again, we're real clear. Like, we'll be real clear at that point. Being right in here, if this is what it is, so early, right? And so it's hard to, like, force it with an opinion on what the accumulation will look like. until there's more development that happens within it. And I know that's not what people want to hear. I know they want to hear very, very, very clear exactly here's what's going to end up happening next. And it's just the thing I can say is this has been a bear market. We've capitulated, high volume. Indicators are all over in the oversold conditions, as you would expect. Now we're in the accumulation schematics, and all the accumulation schematics can behave very differently. And to isolate that 1 month into it and have a strong determination on what it's going to end up doing. Everybody's going to point to this one because that's what markets do. And I talked about that in my last video. Everybody's going to look back to this one, right? Because we use near-term views, right? But I'm not convinced it has to look like that one. It could be like this. And the reason being is because the market has behaved like this. So, yeah. All right. A lot of rambling. What are we at time-wise? 55 minutes. Okay. Joey. But Stephen, thank you, brother. Joey says, blessing to you and yours. Thoughts on gold and silver? I think it's probably paused out. Daniel Crone. No message, but a super chat, brother. Thank you. Yo, bro, says Horizon. Wink, wink. I don't even watch it. If I pulled it up, I wouldn't even know anything about it. Oscar Hernandez is tax CPA. I am looking for a Mr. Hernandez to confirm this Form 911 statement. Looks like he just put F taxes. I don't need you dorks. I'm rich and famous. Thank you very much. I still sometimes wonder, like, not Oscar, please don't super chat. Just type in the chat if you're here. Are you just casually listening on a random Wednesday? Not Oscar Hernandez? Joey, member for 1 month. Brother, thank you. And then Desmo gifted the 50 memberships as well. Thank you, Desmo. That's crazy. A digital asset guy says, thank you for everything, BCB. As an aspiring crypto influencer on YouTube who wants to talk about how crypto affects other aspects of life, is it okay to use you in content respectfully? I mean, for the most part, it should be, right? The only thing is when people are stealing content, which I've seen your stuff before, and you don't have any impression of stealing content, and you're very respectful digital asset guy. So, I mean, it's probably, and if there's some issue, I'll just DM you or say, hey, man, maybe that one might have been too far. But your stuff has been fine so far. It's been great. I've seen the video you made from XRP Las Vegas 2025, where we were leaving the after party, and you were like, wife's got his back thing. It was very nice. I showed that to my wife. Joshua M. HBAR 2021 to 2024 overlay on XRP today. Accumulation zone. Do we ever see XRP all-time high again? HBAR never did this cycle. I'm not going to say HBAR won't ever set a new high, but I think HBAR's met with a lot of its own stuff. I just don't think HBAR has the demand people think it has. And that's not to be rude. And that's just by looking at institutional flow, ETF flows. Like, there just isn't any demand in there. I brought that up in Markets in the Morning about, the institutional ETF flows that are happening, and how you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP. They're all in an entirely different ballpark, right? And there's like 8 of them, right? Then you also have Chainlink, HBAR, Doge, and Litecoin. Chainlink has a small amount of demand. But compared to the others, it's only like 1/100th, right? Then when you look at things like HBAR, Litecoin, and Dogecoin, there's just absolutely zero demand for these things. So you can overlay fractals all you want, but I think it's more of a demand issue. I think retail is excited because you have a lot of content creators that talk about HBAR, but it doesn't seem that there's actually the real demand there. Doesn't mean we can't get some speculative run or something like that to skyrocket it, but I don't think you're comparing apples to apples between the two. Daniel Crone. Hope you and your family are good. Thank you. Yo, bro. All good, brother. I understand. Thanks for everything. Thank you, yo, bro. Digital asset guy. Thank you, brother. Yeah, the number one thing I could tell, it just depends what you want. Like, the hardest thing about creating content is that viewers reward nonsense. People get really mad about outrageous price predictions or fake news or hypey news or anything like that. But the thing is, you can go on to X and you can see that's what gets the most likes, that's what gets the most shares. And so when you try to become a content creator in this environment and you're trying to be real honest with your work, it's real hard to get off the ground because you don't have people like virally sharing your stuff, because people want to virally share things that are outrageous because that suits their cognitive bias, right? So I was about to tell you, yeah, just, do it the right way, be honest and everything like that. That's the best way to get the reward. But in this day and age, it's so hard to get off the ground unless you aren't hypey and nonsense. And people get so mad that there's so much hypey and nonsense. But the reality is you guys share it. You guys like it. You guys reward people for doing it. So there's a very strong incentive to tell you it's a bull market constantly. There's a strong incentive to share fake news with you. There's a strong incentive to just hype you up with absolute nonsense because it gets rewarded for doing so. Longevity wise, I don't think it has a longevity to it. But the simple things that work for content creation, and I know that I've only been doing 3 pieces of content per week for the last several months, but that's because I kind of broadcasted ahead of time. That's what I would do during a bear market, and that was my intention. And it'll still remain that way for a little while. But the things you can do is just be consistent, always showing up. And you will find phases where you run out of things to talk about and you're kind of beating your head against a wall and to find something new to say. And I kind of joke about it, how I'm like, we were just regurgitating the same thing and saying it over and over again, because we're watching paint dry on a chart. We're having to find creative ways to talk about it in a different light. Yeah, but showing up all the time and being there, interacting, right? I do markets in the morning because it gives me an opportunity to actually interact with you and not just be a number on the screen, right? This is my way. And I show up to the XRP events to shake hands and meet people, to make it not just be numbers on a screen. But the number one thing you can do is be consistent and show up all the time, even when times are tough. Learning new skills, understanding what works well, like understanding the algorithm, like not just, I think a lot of people have probably tried to make YouTube videos on their own in the past, and the reason they struggled to gain any momentum is they thought they could just turn a camera on and start talking and that they would do well. But there's a lot of elements to YouTube, and when it comes to thumbnail selection, title selection, intros, outros, keywords, all those different things. Understand those things that are important. And you can, simple Google searches, simple YouTube searches, how to be a successful YouTuber, how to be a successful content creator, a step-by-step approach on how to set up a professional looking YouTube or something like that. Those all exist out there. It's not as simple as just turning the camera on. And also showing your personality a little bit. I don't know. I decided in the beginning I would show a little bit of it because we're watching paint dry. I don't know. I think it's better that way. I think because there's so much cut and dry technical analysis, and it is cut and dry. It is boring. But we have to kind of entertain ourselves a little bit along the way. GM, good morning from RBBPS. Do you have friends that are Tesla maxis? I don't have many friends that are. I do have one friend who is. Jaws Murder says, hey, BCB, looking back to the SEC versus Ripple, did you ever notice anything in the charts that it would have been an indicator to price action then? Did XRP behave correctly at the time, or was it overhyped? Right now, feels similar to me. One, I appreciate your super chat. It was very generous. The problem I have with the question you asked is I don't know what phase you're referring to, because the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit like lasted from here to here. Right? The lawsuit's filed here, and then the appeals are officially withdrawn there. That's where it officially ends. Right? Man, we talked about that a lot. Case ends at the top. It did. Here, I don't know. Like, people ask me that question a lot of the time. Do you think that XRP would have only done this if it hadn't been for the SEC? I don't. And it's just, there's something you're asking a theoretical or hypothetical question that just couldn't end up being answered. Because I don't know, right? I'm speculating with you. The reason, you would have thought it would have busted out right in here is this is where Bitcoin's busting out, right? Bitcoin busts out of its new all-time high. 5 days later, the SEC sues Ripple, and then XRP plummets. But what happens to the rest of the market? Ethereum goes, Cardano goes, right? Altcoins all rip into this moment, just like this, right? Bitcoin breaks into its new all-time high, right? Here we go. Here's the election, Tuesday, November 5th, Bitcoin breaks into the new all-time high, and then boom, there goes crypto. That would have been the expectation here. That was our expectation here. But 5 days after the all-time high break, that's when the SEC sued Ripple, right? And then XRP got delisted from all the exchanges, including Coinbase, right? And then Grayscale even dissolved their XRP trust, right? But then, it only goes into a retrace, but then we saw that in a lot of the market too. So I don't know. And I don't know how to answer the question to say one way or the other, because it's just, that wasn't the world we lived in. We lived in the world where it did happen, not in the one where it didn't. Technic, what's up, dude? Hey, brother. Speaking of content creation, I finally made a sneaker YouTube channel on January 1st. Does anybody like sneakers? Check it out at Tech Cops Kicks. That's TEQCOPS Technic, brother. That's cool, dude. I haven't seen you in a while, man. Hope you're doing all right. Hope you're just enjoying your XRP gains and loving life. You haven't been DMing me panicking about this price action. So I know you sold. It sounds like you didn't get back in. So that's good, bro. You're just making sneaker content. Almost Acres. Thank you very much. This is just a thank you. I appreciate you having my back for the last 5+ years. It's been life-changing. We bought a house and expanded our fig nursery after selling in September. Even started uploading garden and fig content. Are you putting it on your YouTube? Let me go to your channel. Oh, I see figs. I see what look like cuttings. Okay, I'll keep this up to Almost Acres. 117 subscribers. Building a nursery and managing. I see it's been 3 months since you put up a video. All right, I'll go watch your stuff. Thank you, dude. JP Slaps, hey BCB, wondering what the current negative narrative is that you have mentioned. The war? Yes. People accepting bearish market finally? It seems less obvious than prior narratives. I think it's paralyzed everybody. So I wrote about it a lot, right? So like there's knockdown effects, right? So like everybody's screaming about oil, right? So why would you be worried about oil? Right, what is oil at right now? $97, right? So what's the worry about oil? Oil leads to inflation. Inflation leads to the Fed being stuck, right? That leads to liquidity issues. That leads to risk off, right? So it's having to go down the pipeline of what does it end up meaning? Did not Oscar end up coming in the chat? Did I miss it? Or is he missing? I just want to know if he's here. So our last ones, right, when we had like the last ones, there was just things breaking, right? If Luna hadn't collapsed on itself, would the market have still done what it would have done? Yes, it would have still done it because we've compared that to we were in lockstep with the equity market, right? In 2022, we were just oh my goodness. We were just lockstep with equities, right? We didn't need Luna to have to do these types of things, right? We didn't need Celsius to have to do this type of stuff. We were just behaving with markets, right? So you're not getting like your crypto narratives, which you're looking for, right? But we still moved in lockstep with equities, but we also had our narratives, right? And then of course we have our FTX narrative to conclude it and to end it, right? But yes, I would assume a macro narrative could totally be the causation. And I know that because I went through and I watched some of the I spent some time watching some YouTube content, which I had to stop doing for a while because it was so frustrating watching these people just lie. But then once we got down to these levels, I'm watching how then they start saying, well, now I'm going to be cautious because I don't know how this geopolitical event's going to end up playing out. And so if it's happening to the content creation, why is it happening to the content creation? Because they're getting forced, their hand is getting forced by their audience. I still feel I have to write a book. I have to write a book of what it's like being on this side of the screen to know what, so people can like really understand the pressures that a content creator feels. Misha Wilson. You guys are trying to guess. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on your coin. I don't own the coin. I'm not going to own the coin. So if you own the coin, good for you. Good luck. You're going to have to wait 4 years. Ski Richard, I didn't ride the bear all the way down because of you. Thanks, brother. But I haven't accumulated enough. I'm about 10% in. Is one more love still possible? Man, you guys watch the channel. You know what my thoughts are. Of course, a new love is possible. I'm just at 50% to be mindful of whether it will or won't. I think if we get 53, I'd be at least at 80 to 85% in if we got 53. Oh no, did I delete those? Annoying. Okay, we're getting late into this. I'm not sure there's a lot to say outside of just, the ranging still continues. But again, reiterating, hammering home those things of saying, look, when you get to this is now our new environment. It is now ranging context. It is accumulation schematics. It's trying to identify those different accumulation schematics. And they historically take a little time to play out. So those looking for things to ramp up and skyrocket right away, you might be sorely disappointed. And maybe we get pleasantly surprised, but typically these take a little time to play out and organize and build structures and forms, right? We usually have like on things like Wyckoff accumulations, we're looking for things like our selling climax, our automatic rally, our secondary test, right? Then our secondary test in phase B, right? Then we either have spring, right? Or we end up having last point of support that's like an A, B, C, right? And where we are right now is like trying to like make the judgment call on, are we in this or are we in this style, right? very difficult to make that call when you're right there. And that's just where we are. I think we're in one of these, but we just have to kind of get it to show its hand for a minute first. So, okay. Is he's still going? Yeah, I am at an hour and 15 minutes. Long-term thoughts on the charts of gold and silver over the next 5-10 years out. I think we'll see gold at 7,000, whether it takes a couple of years to get there or not. If we're paused out pretty good, I think we'll see $7,000 gold. That doesn't mean it couldn't go down to 4 first before it gets there, but I do think that's where we're headed. As for silver, we could spend a couple of years bouncing between 60 and 100 until eventually I think we're going to go to at least 175. But, you know, in moments like this where there becomes a lot of excitement on silver, you have to understand I've been talking about silver for the entire time I've had the YouTube channel. The processes of getting to these types of phases takes long. This has just been, silver finally had a year, right? And so a lot of people pile into it when it's finally getting a little bit exciting. But typically things move very slow for silver. And if this is going to be a new ranging context before the next leg up, it's usually a couple of years, right? Like this ranging context here is from August of 2020 all the way until March, April of 2024, right? Like they're long. This isn't crypto, right? In crypto, you hope to have a full market cycle of all this stuff have already happened when you have this for silver. It's very slow. I think we'll see $175 silver. Just don't know if that's going to take 5 years. I see participation trophy wife is in here cracking jokes. Yeah, this one got tested on me last night. That was painfully wonderful, honey. Painfully wonderful. Dave says that XRP will touch $1.26. I could probably agree with that. All right. I think we're good. All right. That's it, guys. So I think we're just in a ranging context. It'll be about being patient in here, but it's the continued messaging of this is what bottoming behavior is like for markets. I think we got a lot of people who did get out at the top and they kind of have cash and they're just kind of being cautious on entering that cash is the way I kind of view it as people who watch this channel. And I think that's reasonable. But you know where we are on chain. And you know where we are here. So could have swiped the lows for sure. But, you know, we have got a lot of stuff that's acting like true bottoms in there. So, you know, going for more, you know, you're kind of, you know, taking your own shots. But you see what's there. So, all right. John said thank you, BCB member, for 2 years. You hit 2 years, dude. Thank you very much. We've got 1,400 people in here. If we could hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. We're 615 likes. You just X out the live chat and then hit the like button and then hit live chat again, and you're back. Otherwise, you got a Fed meeting going on today. Get prepared for that. This is the second to last one for Jerome Powell. So this is not his last one. The next one is his last one. That'll be in 3 hours and 40 minutes from right now. Nothing really going on in the news right now. Markets have just been consolidating and rising ever since the scary narratives have started. So, all right, it says 8CHTB, but I know we got Hot Tub Brian in the house. It says, you're a stud. Thank you for your amazing insight. Brother, thank you very much. Guys, have a wonderful day. You know what I'm going to try real hard to do? And it's so stupid that I make this commitment on the channel because I really do want it to be at like 3 pieces of content per week right now. We will try to get a video out tomorrow and Friday before we head into the weekend. We will try. We'll see what we can do. All right, that is it. Well, I guess I got to do this. DJ Mr. Nobody music. Hey, this is probably just Mr. Nobody, right? Hey, BCB, thanks for getting me into silver and metals. They've been a huge positive for my finances while waiting for crypto. Thanks for all the insights. Oh, brother, thank you. It's all you. I don't get you into anything. I just talk about it. Yeah, it's just me. All right, cool. Mr. Nobody, what's up? All right, guys, that's it. Check out the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. The most recent one was posted. Again, we're going into the sentiment stuff. We're going into the news narrative. We're going into the crowd finally getting into it, the content creation finally getting to it. Well, it's always really late. It's always at the last minute when they do. This is the time where things start to kind of change shape and the market starts building a new phase. So I'm excited to be at this phase. Just took a lot of people to get here. But all right, enough. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this live stream and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of froggy,
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday. Dudes.
just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.